Summer is here again. In the normal times, we would have been getting excited about upcoming outing on the beach or a trip abroad for a long-awaited summer holiday. But under the current circumstances, most of us would still have to do with staying home or just a short trip somewhere near. So, to make up to another dull summer home, and as a sort of summer special, I'm going to read stories about weird experiences from holidays and travel for the next 3 episodes. Summer in Korea is hot and muggy, so many people seek some time off in the nature in summer. Most visitors to the country are likely to see just the big modern cities. And true, the small country doesn't have the vast wilderness as in the US or Australia, but there are plenty of mountains with dense forest and cool streams, rivers and lakes, extensive coastline with all sorts of different types of beaches, and small islands dotted around throughout. And indeed, today's story covers all the different places, from mountains to beaches to an island. After listening to the unwelcome encounters with a monster, ghosts, and other paranormals, you might probably think it's not too bad an idea to just stay home after all. So here are allegedly true stories from Korea about weird things happened on holidays. As always, handpicked, translated and narrated by your host, Anthony. When I was 11 or 12, my family took a summer holiday to Mount Jiri. Mom, Dad, me, and my younger brother. My parents loved traveling, so we'd been frequently going skiing in winter or to a beach somewhere in summer or nearby rivers and mountains in between seasons. But that trip to Mount Jiri was our last family holiday. On the day of arrival, the weather was beautiful. As soon as we finished lunch boxes Mom had prepared, we headed to the cool stream of water just in front of the lodging and played there till the dusk. Having traveled a long way and spent the day in the water, I went straight to bed after dinner. I woke up in the middle of the night, sensing some commotion. Mom was up, shivering, and Dad was trying to console her. I was alarmed, but didn't want to interfere with adult business, so I tried to fall back to sleep. Next day was all wet and rainy. I sneaked back to bed as it wasn't weather to go out to the stream. But Mom woke us all up, saying that we should visit the Buddhist temple in the mountain, and we should get ready soon. Her eyes were still red as if she'd been crying all night. She seemed unusually somber, so both I and brother could not dare to question her. So soon all 4 of us headed to the temple in the downpour. Because of the rain and it was yet early morning, there were just few people in the temple. While Dad waited outside, Mom took us 2 inside the main hall and made us offer bows and prayer to the golden statue of Buddha. The rest of the day we stayed in the lodging. Next morning the sun was bright again. I and my brother were excited to go out to the water again. But Mom stopped us and said we were going back home right after breakfast. But didn't we have one more day here? Neither Mom nor Dad gave us any clear answer. My grandparents, who lived with us then, were surprised too to see us return a day earlier. So much so, Grandpa even took me to the side and quietly asked if my parents had a quarrel or something. Mom summoned grandparents for some serious talk, while Dad kept us in the other room as if to keep us well away from the discussion. When the talk was over, Grandma went out, though it was already late in the day, and I didn't see her coming back till I went to bed. It was Grandma who woke me up. Outside the room was my brother already, still half asleep. Grandma took us both out to the garden and in front of the gate. It was barely dawn yet. Considering it was midsummer, it must have been just about 5 in the morning. Soon, Grandma started sprinkling sea salt all over us, to the back of our heads, inside of our shirt, trousers, everywhere. And then we were left just standing there, well seasoned, before we were let in and back to bed. Later in the day, I asked what that was all about, but nobody gave me a clear answer. And since that day, my family stopped traveling anywhere. Grandpa and Dad used to love going fishing, and I joined them sometimes too. The midnight ramens I had then on the lakeside is the best ramen in my life. But that was end of it all too. It was good 6 or 7 years later. One day I happened to be alone home with Mom. We got to talk about the good old days, and it reminded me of the memory of the last family trip. And Mom finally told me what happened that summer. The first night in Mount Chiri, she had a dream. She was just watching us playing in the water. Then suddenly a woman jumped into the water and grabbed me and my brother on each side and ran away into the deeper water. Mom jumped in to chase the woman, shouting, "Help!" Then the woman turned around and sneered creepily at Mom. She said she still could not forget that face. She was woken up by Dad, who was alarmed by all the grunts she made in her sleep. Mom is not very superstitious, but for some reason she could not take that dream lightly. So she hurried back home a day earlier. Upon hearing the story, Grandma sought an advice from a shaman lady in the neighborhood, and the salt bath at dawn was apparently the cleansing ritual instructed by the shaman to rid of the ghost that stuck itself to us. I don't know what to make of the whole thing, but Mom is still clearly serious about it. When I was a freshman, that's already nearly 3 decades ago, makes me feel so old. But anyway, I went to Gangwon-do for a summer holiday with 4 friends from high school. We spent a day on Gyeongpo-dae beach, drinking, swimming and fooling around, till it got dark. Our plan was to go out to the town either to find a bar or a billiard room. We missed the last bus of the day already, so had to get a taxi. The driver took the road along the beach, claiming it was the shorter route. Unlike today, the route back then was pretty rough. All my friends took the back seat, already pretty drunk, and I the passenger seat because I didn't drink. As usual, it was on the non-drinker's shoulder to take care of the drunken friends. They all fell asleep soon. The road was quiet, and there was not a single street lamp. The only lights around were from houses dotted here and there. I myself dozed off a while. When I got around again, I asked the driver, "How much longer does it take?" Silence. "The road is pretty rough, isn't it?" I asked again. Silence. When we first got on, the driver was pretty chatty, asking us where we were from, if we had seen this and that attraction in the area. His stone silence now was so much weirder for that reason. I turned to look at him, but could not see what kind of expression he had in the dark. Then suddenly the rattling of the car got wild. To my shock, the taxi was running off the road and up a hill. I could just grab on my seat and shout, "Hey, hey, hey!" In a matter of few seconds, the car ran across a grass field and bumped into a bush with a thud. Drunken friends on the back got up only then. What? Are we there?" The driver gasped with a startle and started reversing the car. "What's going on?" I shouted, but the driver wasn't clearly himself. He managed to bring the car back on the road. By then all my friends were up, asking what happened, what that was, where we were, and so on. Only after a long silence, the driver finally opened his mouth. "I was definitely driving on the road, and that next moment I realized the car bumped into the bush, and I don't remember how I got there. And when I looked, there in the light from the headlight was a woman. She was waving a hand as if to beckon me to drive on." We were all stunned. Friends asked if it was true if I too saw the woman, but I didn't know what to say other than I didn't see her myself. I still can't tell if the driver's account was true or not. Maybe he dozed off and was just making an excuse. But his panic was too palpable to be from a man making up a story. In the first summer after high school graduation, I and my gang got together to plan a summer holiday. One of them suggested Chiri Mountain, that last year he had visited there with his family and found a lovely spot with a clean, cool stream with plenty of cool women around. Well, we were hot-blooded young men. After a 3-hour-long journey, we finally got there, to find the water around the promised spot had dried up down to the ankle deep and was full of little kids only. The friend who led us there turned into our punching bag and had to carry all our backpacks. But since we were there anyway, we decided to explore around to find a better spot. It wasn't an easy task. The day was hot and the short rainfall in the recent weeks caused many parts of the stream to become too shallow to dip in. When we were almost giving it all up in the middle of grass and weeds, suddenly we heard a sound of water streaming. We made our way through the tall grass, following the sound, and voila! At the end of it, found a little waterfall falling into a waterhole that was about the half the size of a swimming pool. Perfect! To make up for the hard journey to the point, we all dropped our bags and jumped into the water. There were even 3 different spots of rocks perfectly positioned to jump into the water. After some time, we started noticing something. As we swam out after diving, we all felt the strong current that pulled us towards the fall. On top of that, some of the gang started complaining about getting cramp when near the fall. But what does young boys care when they are having fun? Should anyone get a cramp, we just threw a swim ring to them and carried on playing around. It started getting dusk. We thought to put the tent we brought with up and spend a night there. But none of us knew how to properly put it up. Duh. In the end, we gave up and decided to find a lodging in the area. As we were packing things up, we found a little cave that we hadn't noticed. Inside a cavity was covered with numerous talismans and 3 candles, a sign that there took place some sort of shamanic ritual. Some of the stupider ones from the gang started making a mess there, crushing candles, etc., but I felt a bit creeped and hurried them to pack up and move on. We managed to find a lodging before it got too late. We needed some drink after a long day and found a corner shop nearby. The owner, a middle-aged man, chatted us up, asking if we had managed to find a place to swim, that most usual good spots had dried up due to the drought. So we told him how and where we found this fantastic spot. His face changed. "You are crazy! Did you see the signs that swimming is banned there?" We were confused and asked why that was. Apparently, at least 10 or more people had drowned under the fall. All of them sucked into the underneath the fall, and some survivors would say they experienced a terrible cramp around the fall. So they had closed up the path to the spot, put a swimming ban sign, and performed the ritual every year. We all froze, and quietly came back to our room. All night long, the drumming noise of a heavy downpour kept us from falling asleep. Next day on the news were how the sudden flush of water had swept through the streams in the Chiri mountain. If we managed to put our tent up, we would all have washed away too. We still talk about how lucky we were that summer. I'm a man now in my 40s, and here I want to finally talk about what I experienced more than 20 years ago on an island I visited. I've never talked about it to anyone so far, but now that my father has passed, I figured it was time to recount before too late. I was a rebellious teenager then, but was excited for my dad's proposal to make a summer holiday on an island, a holiday for us 3 guys, including his younger brother. We arrived at a small port in Korea on the southern coast. There we met up a boat owner who was said to be my dad's acquaintance. He took us to a small island untouched by usual holiday makers. The journey must have taken us a good 1 hour. I still vividly remember the horrible seasick I suffered on the way. The first impression of the island was a bit disappointing. There wasn't even a proper wharf, and the boat berthed at a rock formation whose natural shape landed itself as a crude wharf. The captain explained that there were now only about 50 people left on the island, all his own family and relatives in one way or the other. Just off the shore, the first odd thing I noticed was there were lots of stone walls as tall as a grown-up man. But once past walls, it looked like a typical quaint countryside village. Meanwhile, the captain was telling us that we should never venture out once the sun set, and not to mind the weird noises we might get to hear as they were just wind blowing through the stone walls. It only triggered my curiosity, but I soon forgot it all once we hit the beach. The sandy beach was empty except for 2 men who introduced themselves as the relatives of other villager. We got along quickly, and we all had a fabulous time, swimming, sharing food, carefree running along the empty beach. As the sun started setting, my dad, who didn't enjoy drinking, suggested that we should all now go back, as we might catch a cold in the night sea wind. Indeed, the tide was coming in to the spot where we settled, and wind was getting wilder. I don't know if it's my false memory, but I think it was also about then I started hearing a strange metallic noise. But the other 2 guys, having opened their cans of beer, insisted staying behind a while longer. In the end, just us 3 took our way back to the village. Dad seemed still worried about the guys, to which Uncle asked if we should go back to take them back, while I I was so tired and couldn't think anything much. And then we heard screams from the beach side. We looked at each other's surprised faces a while. Uncle volunteered he would run down to check on them and that Dad and I would be better going ahead. We nevertheless waited on the spot. Time just passed on without any further signs and none showing up. I asked Dad if we too shouldn't go to the beach to search for them, to which Dad quietly pushed on our way back to the village. Dad said he should talk to the captain and I should stay in the room. Frustrated and curious in equal measure, I sneaked out and eavesdropped their conversation. They were talking about what they referred as the demon Ghoul. The captain's wife was saying that they must have been lured by the demon Ghoul and they should wait till the morning before we could go searching. Seeing Dad not protesting to that, he too seemed to have already heard about the demon Ghoul. I got mad to find out that they had no intention to rescue Uncle right away. I sneaked out by myself and ran down towards the stone walls. As my momentary courage out of fury subsiding quickly, all my senses became hyperactive like a little field rat sensing the near presence of an eagle. That strange noise was coming from the other side of the wall, which sounded like a mixture of a hiss of a snake and a wheezing of an asthma patient. I told myself it was just wind and carried on walking along the wall. But it didn't take long to realize the noise would continue even when the wind or wave died down. And then I heard something scratching on the wall. I froze still, and through the crack of stones I saw a black figure on the other side. Something snapped in me, and all I can remember afterwards is that I rushed back to the captain's house, screaming all the way. The whole night I shivered under the blanket, trying to dismiss the noise of the demon Ghoul in vain. Next morning, wind and wave turned mild, and there was no trace of the noise, as if everything of the night before was but a dream. The captain's wife joined my dad and I to the beach, but there was no trace of my uncle or the two guys, not even their footsteps. The wife sighed and said that the demon Ghoul must have got them. According to her, in the island was always the story about a demonic monster that looked like a human. It would creep onto the shore from the dark waves to harm people. The reason of unusually high stone walls all around the village was all to fend off the Ghoul. After hours of search on the beach, we came back empty-handed. The captain suggested that we should go back to the harbor to file the missing report. And the rest happened so quickly and mysteriously before we could grasp what exactly was happening. By the time we reported to the police and came back with them to the harbor to find the captain, he and his boat were gone without a trace. We didn't know neither the name nor the exact location of the island, and without him it wasn't possible to find it. We got around on the police boat several islands in the area that could be the one we visited, but none of them had that tall stone walls. In the end, we had to come back home with an empty promise of the police that they would carry on searching. A few years later, my uncle was officially declared from missing to dead. For the past 20 years, I privately searched around for an answer, but it yielded nothing. I still sometimes have a nightmare of me wandering underneath the tall stone wall, haunted by the noise the demon ghoul makes. Could what I saw and heard that day be really true? Whatever happened to the island now when its inhabitants were all shrunken elderlies 20 years ago? Might I be the only one left now who knows the island and its demon ghoul? Only the photo I took with my uncle on that beach keeps reminding me of what happened that day. Hi, it's Anthony here, and thank you very much for your listening. Hope you enjoyed today's stories. Talking about travels, I wonder if any of you had a chance to visit Korea. If you had any memorable experiences from your visit, do let us know. It's always interesting to get an outsider's perspective of one's own country. And if any of you are planning to visit Korea in the future, I highly recommend to get out of the big towns and have a moment to enjoy its nature, whether it be its mountain, river, or sea, despite of all the scary stories I read you today. Next week will be another set of stories about holidays and travels, specifically what some Korean internet users experienced during their trip to other countries. If you haven't yet, why not give my video a thumbs up and a comment, and consider subscribing to my channel. Help this little channel grow, please. Until the next, stay safe and take care.